With Simon Benoit playing very good as of late and becoming a staple on the Leafs' blue line, he has spoken out regarding his contract situation, indicating that he would be very open to an extension with the Maple Leafs. So I'll break that down in this episode, as well as Tyler Bertuzzi. He has been struggling as of late. So we're going to break all that down in this episode. But before we do, a quick reminder to hit the subscribe button. We notice a large percent of you who are watching are not subscribed. So if you aren't already, make sure to scroll down and hit that button. We are on the road now to 6,500, Darius. We hit 6,000. So thank you to all who have helped us hit that. And thank you again for your continued support. Now let's get into the first topic of the day today, which is Benoit speaks out on an extension. And Sheldon Keefe also had some pretty interesting comments to discuss today regarding that. So let's just start with what Benoit had to say, and let's get right into it. So we all know that Benoit has been very good as of late, Darius. And, I mean, the whole season we've kind of been on the train. I got a graphic for you in a second. But before we do, this is what Benoit had to say. He said, quote, "I would love to re-sign, but I don't like to think about it. I just think about my game tonight." Now, let's just get your thoughts on this. Obviously, he's a pending UFA. He's making around $700,000. He has been one of the better players, blue liners, the defenseman that the Leafs have had, especially regarding the contract situation. Do you want the Leafs to re-sign him, and do you think that they should re-sign Simon Benoit, who is, again, a pending UFA, which a lot of people out there and a lot of fans aren't really talking about?
Absolutely. And I mean, it's crazy. He came in as a walk-on, basically, and he's earned a spot, completely earned it. Everyone thought he was going to come into the team as maybe a seventh or eighth defenseman, and he's been way better than that. And I think he's earned himself a pretty decent contract going into next year. And I mean, if it allows for it, I would hope that the Leafs re-sign him. But I mean, guys, we're already in February. At the end of February, the Simon Benoit train is about to leave. If you haven't hopped on yet with Nick and I, you better get on the Simon Benoit train right now, because this guy is a stud. I mean, I don't know where they'd be without him, to be honest. He's one of their better defensemen this year. And if you just look at his defensive numbers too, and everything like on Hockey Reference, and the fact that he makes as little as he does, he has been one of the bright spots on the Leafs this year. And I mean, like you mentioned too, Sheldon Keefe mentioned that, you know, he brings physicality, he brings size, the way his gap control, right? Everything. The physicality, like I said, that the Leafs need, he brings that. That's all he brings, really. Got in a fight last night, laid a couple big hits, right? Like, that's what the Leafs need. So it's awesome. Like, the fact that he came in as this kind of tryout almost, and he's turned into this has been fantastic.
Yeah, you saw the graphic. We're going to play it again. Hop on the train now. I mean, we hopped on it very, very early, so we're glad that we can kind of say that we've been doing that. And this is what Sheldon Keefe had to say about it here now. He had to say on the emergence of Simon Benoit, Trey Dretchleving, that is, really liked the elements that he brings, the size, the length, the physicality, and he can cover ground. Very little has gone poorly when he is out there, and that's the biggest thing. We knew coming into the season, or I guess not coming into when he got signed by the Maple Leafs under the actual big league contract there, that he wasn't going to score many points. He wasn't going to be the flashiest player, but they needed a guy who can kind of do the little things, especially with the absence of John Klingberg, who obviously wasn't a defensive in the first place. But once he went out, there was an open spot, and Benoit kind of took it and ran with it. I mean, I love him. I love the play. I don't think that the Leafs are not going to extend him. I think they're definitely going to have that conversation about extending him, because I'm sure there's a lot of teams out there who would love to grab him, and I don't think he's going to cost very much as well. When you're looking at the Leafs blue line core, I mean, they still don't really have a great one, at least locked up long term. You have Morgan Rielly, you have a couple guys, but I don't know. What do you think it would take to keep him? And any final thoughts before I move on?
Yeah, I think even before the end of the year, the Leafs blue line is going to look very different than what we're used to. And I mean, coming into this coming off season, like, obviously you want to focus on the playoffs, but if we're looking at in terms of like roster construction and defense construction, it's going to look different going into next year too. And I wouldn't mind seeing him on it. And like you said, I don't think he's going to get a huge significant raise or anything like that. He could be, you know, in the $1 million range, because the fact that he's only making $700,000 is crazy. But I don't think he's going to command like upwards of like $3 million or anything like that. I think what he brings kind of, you know, you can get that for $1 million, maybe $2 million, or, you know, he's definitely going to get a raise. I just don't think it's going to handicap the Leafs in any way. But the fact that they have him on the team now, the fact that he likes to be there, and he would be open to re-signing, I think you look at re-signing him. He's been a revelation this year. I mean, they need more of what he brings. Him and McCabe have been fantastic. So if you're a Leafs fan, I think it's a no-brainer for them to try and re-sign him. Nice
to see some, I guess, technically homegrown talent coming up and just walking into, rather than having a lot of the signings that Brad Treliving unfortunately struck out on. It's crazy to think that he has had more of an impact than John Klingberg. If you'd have told me that a few months ago, it would have been a wild thing to discuss. But let us know, do you want us to, or the Leafs to re-sign Simon Benoit, and Are you happy with how he's played? I think you have to be. Now let's move on to a topic which is a bit interesting now. And this is Tyler Bertuzzi. His struggles have continued throughout the season. This is another signing that Brad Treliving made that has been interesting. Obviously, the process, I think, was fine. And you have Jake Believes here saying, I'm Team Bertuzzi. I like his game. I understand he's underperforming badly, but I enjoy watching him play. No clue what it is. He's just a solid hockey player in the right places, does the right things. We bring this up because we want to get your thoughts in the comments. And Darius, I want your thoughts on this as well. Obviously, you look at his actual stats. He has 21 points in 51 games, only 6 goals, and he had 30 goals just 2 years ago in 2021 with the Red Wings. So a major drop-off. Obviously, last season in 2022, he split time between the Bruins and the Red Wings, only put up 8 goals. So we were hoping that he would bounce back to being the Detroit Red Wings of 2021 and his self there. What are you seeing from him actually gameplay-wise and him playing? He's only 28 years old. He almost seems like he's a lot older than that, but he has a lot of time. Well, not a lot of time. He has the rest of the season to figure it out. They're not going to cut him. They're not going to waive him, you wouldn't think. But again, through 51 games, only 6 goals for Bertuzzi.
Yeah, and I tend to agree with Jake, and I think a lot of people do too, based on the likes on the tweet and just a passing tweet. But I think he's a really good player, and I think he is in all the right spots on the ice. You can see that, and especially the last couple of games. I mean, he should have 6 goals in his last 2 games or something. He's gotten a lot of chances recently, and he just hasn't been able to bury. If you look at some advanced stats on Hockey Reference, for example, too, he's playing a little bit under his 82 game average. So, I mean, yeah, pretty unlucky. He's been unlucky, and I think he can kind of bring that up. And that's just to his average. So I think on a team like the Leafs, they have way more skill than, teams he's played on in the past, like the Red Wings. So I think he can definitely, pick it up a little bit, we'd hope. But again, at the end of the day, if you look at his stats this year, and everyone's complaining, compared to last year, in around the same games played, he didn't have that many more points. I think he only had 9 points more than where he is at this point in the season. Yeah, last year. So if you look at that, I mean, what did they get him for? They got him for the playoffs. We kind of knew that. So everyone's complaining about the regular season. Obviously, I wish that he fit in a little bit better and was producing a little bit more. But if you look at what he did with the Bruins last year, it's the same kind of production in the regular season. And then he went off in the playoffs, right? He had 10 points in, I could be mistaken, but I think he had 10 points in 7 games or something like that. And I know they lost, but he was their best player, and that is a good Bruins team last year. So what did you get him for? You got him for the playoffs. So if he turns up in the playoffs, I think that's great. But in terms of on ice, I mean, yes, he does some stupid stuff. He took a stupid penalty yesterday, and it almost cost them the game. But honestly, I think he's in the right places, and he does a lot of good things. He just hasn't been able to bury. So I'm worried if he goes away in the playoffs. If he becomes a ghost in the playoffs, then yes, it's terrible. But the Leafs are doing decent. They just have to squeeze into the playoffs. And if he becomes a really dominant factor in the playoffs, then there we go, right?
Yeah, and I mean, looking at this, his last game, which was, again, yesterday, you made the post game about it. He played a season low, 10 minutes, 55 seconds, and didn't play again after a third period penalty. Goal drought, 19 games. So it's going to be interesting to see how he kind of does here. And since December 1st, you look at all these goals. You have Matthews at 31, and then a lot of lackluster things there. And you see Bertuzzi down there with 1 goal and 30 games played. So it'll be interesting to see what he does going forward. But that will wrap it up. Darius, hopefully the Leafs can continue winning some games, and hopefully a lot of these players that, I mean, there's a few players now that are kind of underperforming, but then you have guys like Simon Benoit, to throw the animation in one more time, who have been overperforming. So it'll be interesting to see, but let us know in the comments what your thoughts are on all of that. If you want to check out our video from yesterday, click on your screen now, and we will see you tomorrow.